Hi, I'm Jeanette Monfusco, a sophomore international business major at Bloomsburg University. This is my presentation from my Contemporary Issues in World Politics class. For my presentation, I've decided to touch on the issue of inequality and exclusion in various countries around the world. I at first wanted to do a different issue for each country, but the issue of economic inequality, poverty, and wealth distribution seemed to be the biggest issue in all of the countries I have researched. So I'm going to mainly focus on those issues around the world. I would first like to explain exactly what inequality is, both in general and internationally. Inequality is the state of not being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities. This issue has increased over the last 3 decades. International inequality is the idea of inequality between countries. This issue can be global inequality, economic differences, medical care, and even education. Inequality in a country can be measured by the Gini coefficient, which is a statistic which quantifies the amount of inequality that exists in a population. This is on a number scale between 0 and 1, where 0 is equal to the perfect equality and 1 is equal to perfect inequality. The first country I would like to talk about is, of course, the one we all live in, the United States. The United States inequality issue is the economic inequality, which is the unequal distribution of income and opportunity between different groups in society. Income inequality is the highest in the U.S. of all the G7 nations, which, as you see pictured to the left, is the U.S., UK, Italy, Japan, Canada, and Germany, and France make up the G7 countries. The United States Gini coefficient is 0.48, which is almost half, which is pretty high. There's also a huge black and white income gap, which has persisted. Finances of black and white is as wide as it was in 1968. And to the right, you can see a graph of the household income in 2018 dollars between the whites and the blacks. Another income gap is between gender, as women of all races earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by men, which there's also a graph to show that at the bottom. Brazil is another country that struggles with income disparity and poverty. There are about 23.3 million people in Brazil living below the poverty line. They have a monthly income of BRL 233.32, which is about $40 US. This rate has rose 33% in the last 4 years. The Gini coefficient of Brazil is 0.85, which is one of the highest on the grid. This has rose at a rate of 50%. There are some things that need to be done in Brazil to help with this inequality issue, as in rethinking their tax system and taxing the rich instead of the poor. Mexico is one of the countries belonging to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD program. This organization has 37 members and was founded to stimulate economic progress and world trade in developing countries. Of the 37 members, Mexico has one of the highest rates of inequality. The richest 1% of population owning half of the country's wealth in Mexico. Mexico also sits with a Gini coefficient of 0.78, which is pretty high, but is still below Brazil. And their income inequality driving factors include wage restrictions, which the lowest minimum wage among OECD countries, and limited redistributive role of the state through tax policies, which is the absence of a progressive tax policy. Taxes only reduce inequality by 2% compared to an average of 27% in the other OECD countries. And the picture on the right shows a Mexican holding a sign that is in Spanish, and the sign reads, "The worst crime is social inequality." There have been many riots and marches in Mexico to help fight against this social inequality. Out of the 5 countries I have researched, the United Kingdom has the lowest inequality rate, but is still a very unequal country. It is more equal than the United States, which is crazy to think, although their Gini coefficient of 0.75 is higher than the United States. Child poverty in the United Kingdom has increased. About 4.5 million children, which is 33%, are classified as poor. Inequality is less the problem that it has risen, more that it hasn't fallen. The United Kingdom is still living with the consequences of the 1980s. There's an absence of a transformative policy change, which is leaving little room to believe inequality will change ever in the United Kingdom, or anytime soon at least. South Africa is the last country I'm going to be talking about. South Africa, as many people know, is the most unequal country in the world, despite the 25 years of democracy. The people of South Africa hold fewer assets, have fewer skills, earn lower wages, and are more likely to be unemployed. The Gini coefficient of South Africa is about 0.81, which is pretty high up on this scale. South Africa is not just suffering from income inequality, but also suffering from unequal access to opportunities and essential public services. The richest households are 10 times wealthier than the poor households. The South African population, 55% of them, live in poverty. 25.2% live below food poverty line, which is making less than $37 a month. Inequality seems to be passed down from generation to generation in South Africa, as nothing seems to be getting fixed. And as you can see from this horrible picture on the right, the divide between rich and poor is even visible from the sky. You can see clearly where the rich live and where the poor live. To run this presentation, I wanted to show pictures of what poverty looks like in all 5 of the countries I talked about throughout this presentation. As you can see, poverty looks different for all 5 countries, but they are still suffering from the same things, just at different levels. This is an issue that affects millions, and I want to leave you thinking about what you can do personally to help make a change around the world. This slide shows the resources I used to help me complete this presentation. I thank you all for listening, and that is all I have for today.